Have you been wondering when the hummingbirds might return to your region? Let's break it down for you. So when we talk about this and you see the charts of the hummingbirds returning, it's normally just talking about the eastern part of the United States and the most common hummingbird species, the ruby-throated hummingbird. So there actually are some other hummingbird species that you can find in the winter or year-round. For example, in the west, there's the Anna's hummingbird. And in the Gulf, you can find the buff-bellied hummingbird, as well as the rufous hummingbird. So there are species that you can find year-round. There's actually a winter hummingbird season in the Gulf too, which is a cool thing that you get to experience if you live there. So it's important to consider those other hummingbirds. When we're talking about when do the hummingbirds return, normally they're talking about the migratory species in the west, and then in the east, the ruby-throated hummingbird as pretty much our sole hummingbird that we get that moves through. If you see anything else and you're not in those areas with winter species, it's probably a rare species. So I'm going to break down when you can expect the hummingbirds to return. You should be putting your feeder out about 1 to 2 weeks before this expected return time. And it does vary depending on how the weather is, what's been happening in the season. So this doesn't always hold 100% true, but it's a good idea of where the hummingbirds might be depending on the season. And this is going to be based on a chart the Mississippi State Extension Service did that I thought was really cool. So we're going to adapt it onto our map here. To start, the hummingbirds are going to come up from further south. So they'll start in the Gulf around March 1st through the 15th. Then after that, they'll start working their way up a little further north in some of those same states from March 15th through the 31st. Then they'll move into kind of the center of the US, April 1st through the 15th. Then further north, April 15th through 30th. And then they'll kind of reach the higher states and into Canada, May 1st through the 15th. So like I said, about 1 to 2 weeks before that expected date, you should have your hummingbird feeder out. And it's a great time to start thinking about what you want to set up. This is one of the smart hummingbird feeders. You're definitely welcome to try those. We have a bunch of reviews if you want to learn more about them. But you can put the traditional feeders out as well. And it's recommended that you use a 1 to 4 sugar to water ratio. So 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. And you don't need to add any red dye to it. The red on the feeders is plenty to attract those hummingbirds in. And you also want to make sure you're keeping your feeders clean. So if it's really hot, you're going to clean them more often. Some people just use vinegar water solution. Other people use a little bit of bleach. I'm not going to go into cleaning too much. You can check out what people are doing online and pick kind of your preferred method. But if it is hotter, you're going to want to clean those feeders more often and make sure you are cleaning them because some people don't, and then hummingbirds can actually get diseases from the uncleanly feeders. So make sure you're cleaning your hummingbird feeders properly more often, the warmer it is. But that's a little bit about when your hummingbirds are expected to return. In addition, some other species that people always ask about when they return are Baltimore orioles and rose-breasted grosbeaks. So about late April to early mid-May is when the Baltimore orioles are going to come back, as well as the rose-breasted grosbeaks. And I don't know about other people, but at least for me up in Wisconsin, they seem to come back on the same day. Like I just go out and all of a sudden there's Baltimore orioles and rose-breasted grosbeaks, which is always a welcome sight. So that's a little bit about when your hummingbirds are going to return. So you want to keep those feeders out until at least late fall, unless you live in some of those winter hummingbird areas. But sometimes they do show up at weird times. We had an Allen's hummingbird that showed up in the winter once, and the host put some Christmas lights around the feeder to keep it from freezing, and that bird stayed for a little bit. Hopefully it made it back. So you never know when they might randomly show up or a rare species could show up, but that's a little bit about what to expect. Let me know if you're seeing hummingbirds in the comments below, and thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Badgerland Birding.